Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Wednesday, May 23rd, 2012. In today's tough economic climate, different communities around the world are trying to get all the help they can get to improve their financial situations. And here in southern Arizona, many elected officials and business leaders are looking south to one of the world's largest nations and economies. Mexico is a major contributor to Arizona's economy, and experts say there are growing opportunities for more exchange between both sides. Joining us to discuss some details is Marisela Solis. She is the business advocate for the Tucson Mayor's office. Marisela, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So what is your description as a business advocate? What basically do you do?
I work in the business, in the mayor's office, dealing with businesses, small, large, medium, international, national, that are interested in doing business in the city of Tucson. And so what I do on a daily basis is I receive calls from businesses that are either stuck in our system that I can help mitigate some of the issues that come up, or I work with businesses that are calling that are interested in coming to Tucson or just want to learn more about our region, and oftentimes they come through the mayor's office.
So you don't just deal with Mexico, but let's concentrate on Mexico first, and then we'll move on to other areas. How important is this relationship with the country of Mexico?
Well, our relationship with Mexico is key. I think, as you spoke earlier, it's so important that businesses are looking to diversify their clients, and Mexico is an obvious choice. And if businesses have not thought about Mexico, now is the time to do so. Our demographics tell us, or this recent studies tell that the demographics are just right for any company who is interested in growing and exploring that market. The buying power is incredible. Our proximity to the border is key, and many other businesses across this country are envious of our position in southern Arizona. And so I encourage businesses to take a look at export into Mexico and learn how to harness that energy of power.
And you say that the mayor of Tucson works with elected officials as well, not directly with business leaders in the country of Mexico?
Correct. So we also have to be careful of how we work with other countries because of cultural differences. And so we want to be sensitive and we want to be respectful. And so the mayor of Tucson is very interested in supporting Mexico and making sure that our businesses grow. And so one of the ways that we do that is by meeting with the elected officials in Mexico. Currently, Mexico is going through some elections, and so we're waiting to see what the outcome of those elections will be. But the mayor is very committed to working with Mexico, particularly Sonora, to make sure that we strengthen our relationships and that policies are created that make sense for both countries, and in particular on the border, because we do know that border communities have unique differences.
And I know that you work with many different agencies, many different organizations, but let's talk about your relationship with the Arizona Commerce Authority.
Correct. So the Arizona Commerce Authority was created not too long ago. They are actually in their infancy, and they've been a great asset in our community in that they bring specific tools to help businesses leverage opportunities outside the country. And so one of these areas is exporting into Mexico. And so we're working with Kevin O'Shea from the Arizona Commerce Authority to put together an event on May 31st that is also being hosted by the Micro Business Advancement Center, where that workshop will focus on teaching business owners how to enter into an international market. So they are an incredible resource that is available to our community, and there is no charge for this workshop, and they also have many tools available to businesses that are of no charge. So we encourage people to take advantage.
And that's going to be held on May 31st. Any idea where?
May 31st at the Micro Business Advancement Center. For more information, you can call them, and they can take your reservation, and it's going to be over lunch. So.
Okay, great. And you also work with the U.S. Department of Commerce. What's happening with this group?
Great. They also have an incredible toolbox available for businesses, and they come out of the Small Business Administration. And so they have a lot of tools available for businesses to take advantage of. Again, there is no cost for them to work with a business. And the great thing about working with them is that Eric Nielsen does a great job of working side by side with a business to help them enter into a new market, an international market particularly, and will actually help to make those business-to-business connections for them. So the mayor is very supportive of both of those programs, and we encourage the business community to take a look and see if they are a candidate to take advantage of the tools.
So if somebody locally is watching this program and they want to at least test the waters about possibly expanding into Mexico, What would you recommend for him or her to do first, or how to get started?
I would say come to the workshop on the 31st. The workshop is intended to give an overview on what the steps are to begin that process of exporting whatever product that you may have. And then the other piece to that is also how do you attract business from Mexico to come to Tucson, consumers that are coming from Mexico into the Tucson community. How do we attract that, and how do we enhance those, those commerce folks from coming over and making sure that they take advantage of what's already here in Tucson. So come to the workshop on the 31st, learn about export and whether or not you're a good candidate for that process.
Okay, Maricela Solis, business advocate with the City of Tucson Mayor's Office. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thousands of children live in orphanages or group homes just south of the U.S.-Mexico border, and many of these facilities depend on donations from Americans in order to operate. However, some people are questioning how much the charities are truly offering. Jose Luis Jimenez reports in this segment from KPBS, our sister television station in San Diego.
Meet Flor Jacqueline. On the outside, she looks like your typical teenager, full of energy, self-conscious about her looks, likes to hang out with friends and draw. But her life story is atypical. She's an American citizen, born in Long Beach, California, and brought to Mexico when she was 4. She was abused by relatives in Mexico and has spent about half her life in a casa de hogar, which is similar to what in the U.S. is called an orphanage. It's what passes for foster care in Mexico, loosely regulated group homes that get most of their funding from foreigners. Now 18, she is reclaiming her U.S. citizenship. Her ultimate goal is to go to college in the U.S. and work with animals.
Because I see that there are many more opportunities over there to get ahead, because here it seems like life is much more difficult.
Flor's case is unique. Maria Dolores Pares Pombo has studied immigration and orphans at Tijuana's College of the Northern Border.
What is rare to see are kids who are U.S. citizens living in an orphanage or in Mexico by themselves because someone from the U.S. will usually claim them.
Flor has lived most of her life in and around Ensenada, Mexico, and was frequently abused by her mother and grandmother. She said her love for animals came because she viewed them as a refuge. She could talk to dogs and cats, and they would not yell back. At age 8, neighbors called the authorities when they heard a disturbance at Flor's house. They found her bleeding, and she was taken to a hospital for treatment. She was removed from her family and taken to the first casa de hogar. Attempts at reunification with her family failed, so she was placed in a second home and later a third, which she escaped from. Flor seemed destined for a tough life on the streets. One of her friends got pregnant when she was 15. But at an age when most people heading down the wrong path don't turn around, Flor changed.
More than anything, I saw my family and how they were, and I said, oh no, I don't want to be like them. And it was that, more than anything, that inspired me to change.
At age 16 and still a ward of the state, Flor was placed in Rancho El Faro, where she still lives. The orphanage is in the Valle de Guadalupe, surrounded by vineyards and olive trees. Rancho means ranch in English, and that is how this group home is run. They raise animals and crops to eat. They wash their clothes the old-fashioned way. The new kitchen under construction will burn wood because it's cheaper than buying propane. About 35 orphans live here. The majority are teenage girls. Most homes in Mexico will not accept children older than 12. Flor has spent many years in an orphanage, and she always knew that she was a U.S. citizen. But because she was a minor, she needed her mother's permission to cross over to the United States. Her mother never gave it to her. But now that she's an adult, she is on her way.
Yeah.
The director of Rancho El Faro says Flor uses her rough childhood as motivation.
She focuses on what she wants, and that should help her break the cycle of abuse and dependency that she grew up in, because it hurt her growing up in an orphanage.
To help Flor reach her goal, an Orange County-based charity called the Corazón de Vida Foundation has taken a special interest in her. Employees helped her obtain her birth certificate and have driven her to the U.S. consulate in Tijuana to obtain her passport. But why take such an intense interest in one orphan from the hundreds the foundation helps? Maricarmen McFarland Hernandez says Flor is a special case.
Flor Jacqueline has a strong talent. She has a big heart. And she knows exactly that she wants in the life.
The foundation wants to do more than help Flor claim her citizenship. The plan is to have her spend the summer in the United States learning English and then attend college in the U.S. in 2013 after graduating from high school in Mexico, where she gets good grades. Flor's goals go beyond school. She wants to help her family, despite the challenges that poses. Flode wants to reunite with her mother and support her siblings, 3 brothers and a little sister who all live in Mexico. Despite growing up in an extremely dysfunctional family, she feels an obligation to be there for them.
Yoga has been a popular and physically therapeutic activity for centuries, but some new research is shining a light on this discipline as an effective treatment for emotional and mental disorders as well, from depression to post-traumatic stress. Mark McLemore welcomes a guest who is a pioneer in expanding the role that yoga can play in the well-being of the mind.
And I'm joined by Amy Weintraub. She's a yoga therapist and trainer who's been practicing here in the Tucson area for about 16 years. Let me ask you, if you can, to briefly tell us what led you into this lifestyle. How did yoga become an important part of Amy Weintraub's life?
That's a good question, Mark. I had been depressed myself. I had been on medication for many, many years and meditating, but it wasn't until I took my first yoga class in 1989 and then began a regular daily practice that my mood began to lift, and I was able to slowly, with the supervision of a psychiatrist, the prescribing psychiatrist, begin to come off my medication and use yoga as essentially my daily medication to manage my mood. And at that point, I became passionate about sharing what had really essentially saved my life with other people. So I actually became a yoga teacher, and then I started doing research, working with scientists and writing about it. I wrote the first article on yoga for depression in Yoga Journal, and then was asked to write books about it. So it has been a lifelong passion. It was sort of my dharma to discover yoga, which saved my life and has then therefore sort of led me to support many, many other people in their attempt to manage their own moods with yoga.
Well, since you started down this path, you have, as you said, participated and been a consultant on some research studies looking into the actual changes that are going on within a person. So can you maybe explain what happened to you when you accepted yoga as a form of therapy?
Well, for me, I felt lighter and brighter. You wouldn't recognize me. In my 30s, I was heavier and darker looking. I just had this depressed physiology, because what yoga does is it actually begins to change the physiology. As you begin to deepen your breath, your posture changes. So for most people who have depression or mood disorders, they may have a physiological look of depression. Their shoulders are rounded, they're kind of humped over. There's not a lot happening in the solar plexus. The breath is mostly in the upper chest. And when you begin to breathe yogically, you're breathing down to the bottom of the lungs. It improves your posture. It actually stimulates the vagal nerve, which is a known treatment for depression. And what that does is it deactivates the limbic brain. So that's very important for those people who've had a history of trauma. There's often an overdrive of the limbic brain. The amygdala is firing all the time. Cortisol is flooding the system, and we're constantly in fight or flight. So when we're practicing yoga, we're stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system primarily. And what's happening is we're calming that amygdala. I talk about sort of amygdala whisperers. That's what yoga teachers are. We're quieting that fight or flight. So for me, I began to feel better and better, to the point where I went to my psychiatrist, who had been seeing me for a number of years, and said, I don't feel as though I need to be on this medication. I feel so bright and good. And little by little, we titrated me off that medication, and that's important for anyone who's at home and taking medication. You never want to go cold turkey. But we slowly, and as long as my practice continued, but so for me, what's begun to happen after I became passionate about sharing what changed my life is that organically, I was asked to do trainings for psychotherapists and yoga teachers. So I do many trainings to help psychotherapists work with their clients to help them, empower them to manage their mood, to create more focus, more alignment, more. So they come into a session and they're feeling more comfortable.
Well, are you seeing a change in the way that therapists and people who deal in the mental health profession are able to accept yoga now as part of their patients' therapy?
Mark, it's amazing to me because I've been doing trainings for psychotherapists since 2004, and here I am. I've done some trainings in mental health, but I'm not a licensed mental health professional. And more, in fact, W.W. Norton asked me to write a book for therapists, yoga skills for therapists. It's because a lot of therapists have been trained without somatics, without the body involved. And when they begin, more and more therapists are doing yoga themselves, feeling the effects on their own bodies and minds, and they know how important it is to give their clients soothing practices they can do at home so that they don't have to call up in the middle of the week, but that they have tools that they can use to help them self-regulate, to manage their own moods.
And that's something that's an important part of your new book, Yoga Skills for Therapists, it's no mat required. You have a lot of exercises that people could do just sitting in chairs as we are now.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for sharing your insight. Obviously, we could talk about this topic for a lot longer, Amy.
Yes, thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Amy Weintraub, thank you.
An Alzheimer's Institute in Phoenix is involved in a groundbreaking clinical trial to test an Alzheimer's prevention drug on people who are genetically likely to get this disease. This interview comes to us from our sister television station in Phoenix, KAET.
The Phoenix-based Banner Alzheimer's Institute is leading a groundbreaking new study. It involves testing an experimental drug on otherwise healthy people who have a genetic mutation that makes it highly likely that they'll begin to suffer from Alzheimer's symptoms by the age of 45. Here to talk about the test is Dr. Pierre Theriault. He's director of the Banner Alzheimer's Institute. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ted.
This is fascinating. Let's talk about this drug to be studied. Promising, obviously.
Very promising. It has a name. It's called crenezumab. It's a kind of immunotherapy. It's a way to stimulate the body's immune system to fight off bad proteins that cause Alzheimer's disease.
Does it prevent or delay onset or both?
That's a great question. It's being used now. It's being studied now in people who already have the crippling symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. What we're proposing for the first time in history is an unprecedented effort to treat people who are destined with 100% certainty to develop the illness before any symptoms begin.
And this is absolutely fascinating because these people that will be tested are an extended family from Colombia?
We're mostly studying people in Colombia with some in the United States. There's an extraordinary group of people numbering as many as 5,000 who are distantly related to ancestors who carry this very rare causative mutation. Flash forward a few hundred years, 5,000 living within about 100 miles of each other. Perhaps about a third carry this mutation and will develop the disease unless we can do something to stop it.
How was this extended family found?
Our colleague, when I say our, I'm referring to my friend and colleague, Dr. Eric Ryman, who is co-director of the Alzheimer's Prevention Initiative with me, connected with this wonderful neurologist in Colombia, Francisco Lopera, who, beginning about 20 years ago, realized that there was a large number of families dealing with these issues, and over time studied them, eventually got some cutting-edge genetic testing done, and this unique mutation was found. He's been following them for years. They've been waiting for years for this kind of step to be taken. It's a big deal.
It sure is. Now, how will the test be conducted?
We are enrolling people into a registry down there. We already have almost 1,500 enrolled and go through a similar process in the United States. And as soon as we have approval from the appropriate government agencies, we will ask people if they want to participate. Those who do will be screened for appropriateness, and then they'll be given a shot under the skin every 2 weeks. And the shot will either contain the active treatment or a placebo in the group of people who are carriers of the mutation. And then we'll also include people who are non-carriers who will only get the placebo. And the reason we have that element to the design is because people right now don't want to know.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the ethical considerations here. Not only people knowing and not knowing, but giving placebos to folks who are destined to have this.
Right. Well, if we knew the treatment worked, we wouldn't do the study.
Yeah.
So it is mandatory to compare active treatment with placebo and show that you can see a difference. And actually, ironically, using placebo will probably give us the answer sooner, because we can detect very subtle loss of memory and thinking ability now. We've already developed that tool. And so if the treatment blocks that subtle decline, we know we're onto something. And we'll get that answer pretty quickly.
Talk about how these people will be tested. I'm imagining cognitive tests. Will there be clinical tests? Will they be looking at the brain or MRI? What will be looked at?
You got it all. We will be doing very sensitive tests of memory and thinking, asking how they're functioning. Of course, we're very interested in safety. We'll be asking about that. We'll be doing brain scans to look at brain structure, how brain uses fuel, sugar, and how the proteins are being deposited or not deposited. And finally, looking at spinal fluid and blood chemistry. So a whole bunch of outcomes.
The plaque in the brain, can that be looked at? Can you see that?
Yeah, thanks to work done at Banner and by my colleague Eric Ryman and the rest of the team, that technology now exists. And so we're looking to see if we can prevent that from happening.
Side effects? Any side effects with this drug we know of?
The reason we chose this one is that it seems to be remarkably safe and well tolerated. So far, in tests with people, there have not been any major adverse events. Never say never. We have to be very scrupulous in following people, but it looks promising in that regard.
So when you begin to administer the shots, at what age do you start?
Yeah, so we're starting in Colombia in folks age 30 and above who are in these families. That puts them within 10 to 15 years of developing the usual symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Obviously, there will be people older who will also be enrolled, and they'll be even closer.
Will there be people enrolled who have symptoms already?
No, this study will focus on people who are cognitively healthy. The whole idea is, can we block these devastating manifestations from happening in the first place?
Well, it's got to be tough for some of those folks there, especially those with the early onset, to think that there's a test going on, but they can't be a part of it.
There are treatment studies going on all over the world for people who are already affected, including with this therapy. There isn't one at the moment in Colombia.
The cost. What kind of cost are we looking at here for this kind of a study?
North of $100 million.
My goodness. Where's the money coming from?
So Banner Health has a foundation on behalf of the Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and some remarkable donors have banded together to provide about $15 million in support to help make sure that this is handled in a particular way. Yesterday, the government announced a $16 million grant through the National Institutes of Health, and the rest of the tab will be coming from our wonderful pharmaceutical partner, Genentech, in San Francisco.
Maker of the drug.
Maker of the drug.
The test will start when?
Well, the planning started 4 years ago. The grant writing has been ongoing. The planning has been intense. We now go through a period of very, very rigorous government approval. That will take many months. We hope to start treating the first individuals within a year or so.
And it sounds like this could be somewhat open-ended. Is it an open-ended kind of a test? Do you know how long this would last? I mean, if someone is not developing, when do you know that they're not going to develop symptoms with this drug?
We actually think that we can get an initial read after each person has been treated for as little as 2 years. We're going to take a preliminary look then. We're quite confident that by the time people have been treated for 5 years, we'll definitely know whether we're onto something or whether we should bark up another tree.
The last question here, this from a distance,
Yeah.
this sounds remarkable. This sounds like an opportunity literally of a lifetime. You said this is a big deal. How big a deal is this?
This is unprecedented. That something like this has never been attempted before. It definitely puts Arizona on the map. It puts Banner on the map. So we're very excited about the possibilities, and we're also very humbled at the responsibility that we face.
Well, it's a very encouraging report, and we'll keep an eye on it and hope to have you back soon. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
In tonight's video postcard from Cooper James, Laura Tafflinger, and Renice Rodriguez, we take you to a mural that was recently unveiled inside the overpass on 29th Street and Columbus Boulevard. The project is one of the programs by the Tucson Arts Brigade, a community arts and education organization.
My role in the mural was doing a painting on the overpass, and I did a self-portrait of myself.
The overpass was always like graffitied on, and we wanted to make a mural so that no one would graffiti anymore.
These young people are becoming caretakers of their neighborhood.
When I drive by, I see little ones picking up like garbage, putting it in the trash can, which mostly they would have just said, you know. But now they're trying to keep their little area clean. My vision for this area is to see a safe neighborhood for families to live in, crime going down, definitely, graffiti, no more tagging. That way kids can come out and say, well, I can play outside.
There's going to be a lot more plants, and people are going to start basically caring for the world more, and that it's going to be a better place.
Imagine how much money would be saved if we didn't have to paint out so many tags, if we didn't have to repair so many broken windows, and instead we have corps of kids and neighbors going out repairing this stuff. And that's what's started to happen. We've started a movement, and it's unstoppable.
You can get more news and information on our website, azpm.org. To comment on any story you saw tonight, click on it online and go to the bottom. We can also be reached via Facebook and Twitter. Coming up tomorrow night, ahead of Memorial Day, we'll tell you about an upcoming parade and ceremony. You'll learn about the connection between local residents and the Korean War, and supporters of a dog breed with a bad reputation are trying to change its image. I'm Tony Paniagua. Have a great night.